The chandeliers inside the plaza glittered like diamonds raining from the ceiling. Laughter echoed across the marble hall, champagne flowed, and cameras flashed from every direction. It was the annual Wall Street Charity Gala, where money, ego, and ambition dressed in tuxedos. Claire Donovan stood in a black uniform behind the bar, polishing glasses that weren't hers to hold anymore. 2 years ago, she was CFO of Drake Capital, co-founder, strategist, and wife to its golden CEO, Ethan Drake. Tonight, she was just the help. Across the ballroom, Ethan walked in wearing his custom Tom Ford suit. Beside him was Lila Cross, the 24-year-old model everyone had seen on magazine covers. She glowed like a chandelier, the perfect accessory for his ego. Cameras flashed as he wrapped an arm around her waist. Reporters shouted, "Mr. Drake, is she your new fiancée?" Ethan smirked, "She's the future." Claire's hand trembled. The glass slipped, shattering on the counter. For a second, everyone turned toward her, then quickly looked away, as if shame were contagious. Her heart pounded painfully against her ribs. She tried to breathe, but the music was too loud, too cruel. "Claire," whispered another staffer, recognizing her. "You used to be." "I'm not anyone anymore," she cut him off, forcing a smile. She kept working, but her hands were shaking. Every toast, every laugh from Ethan was a dagger. Lila leaned in to kiss him right under the chandelier, in front of the same board members who once toasted to Claire's sharp mind and loyal heart. Her chest tightened. A burning pain crawled up her left arm. She pressed her palm against her heart, but the beat was wild, erratic. She staggered backward, bumping into a tray of glasses. The sound of shattering crystal turned heads again. Someone whispered, "Isn't that his ex-wife?" Her vision blurred. Ethan glanced her way for half a second. Not with concern, but with annoyance, as if her collapse might ruin his perfect photo. Lila whispered something into his ear, and he laughed. Claire tried to take a step, but the floor beneath her felt like waves. Her breath came in short gasps. She reached for the table, missed, and crumpled to the floor. The ballroom froze. Music stopped. A few waiters rushed toward her. Ethan didn't move. He simply adjusted his cufflinks, murmuring, "Get someone to handle that." Her eyes fluttered open for the last time that night. The last thing she saw was his hand, the same hand that once held hers, resting casually on another woman's waist. Sirens wailed outside. As paramedics lifted her onto a stretcher, her phone fell from her bag. The screen lit up for a brief moment, showing the contact list. Mom, deceased. Sister, disconnected. Husband, blocked. And then, one number at the bottom glowed faintly under the cracked screen. Adrian Cole. In that glittering ballroom, while her ex-husband celebrated his new life, fate quietly dialed the only man who would ever show up for her. Rain hammered against the ambulance windshield as it tore down Fifth Avenue. Neon lights from the city smeared across the glass like bruises. Inside, Claire lay unconscious, oxygen mask pressed over her lips, her pulse flickering on the monitor. The medic shouted, "BP's dropping. We need her emergency contact now." The other paramedic scrolled through her phone. "No family numbers work. One's disconnected, one says deceased." He frowned. "There's only one active contact listed, Adrian Cole." The name hung in the air like a strange echo. Neither medic knew it belonged to one of Manhattan's most powerful CEOs. But at that very moment, in a glass tower overlooking the skyline, that man sat at the head of a boardroom table. Adrian Cole, 42, sharp suit, eyes colder than the city below. The kind of man who didn't flinch at billion-dollar losses. Yet when his phone lit up, showing an unknown hospital number, something made him answer. "Mr. Cole?" The voice trembled. "This is Mount Sinai Medical Center. You've been listed as an emergency contact for a Miss Claire Donovan. She's been admitted critical condition." He blinked. Claire Donovan? The name clawed through a memory. 2 years ago, she'd saved his company from a legal disaster. A quiet woman with steady eyes who once told him, "I'm not afraid of power. I'm afraid of wasting my life on the wrong man." He rose from his chair mid-meeting. The board members watched in confusion. "Cancel the rest of the session," he said. "Now." Within minutes, his black Mercedes cut through the storm toward the hospital. Manhattan's skyline flashed by, a city that devoured the weak and crowned the ruthless. He didn't know why he cared. He just knew he couldn't let her die alone. Inside the ER, fluorescent lights buzzed like angry bees. Nurses rushed past with gurneys and charts. The smell of antiseptic clung to the air. When Adrian walked in, rain dripping from his trench coat, heads turned. He didn't belong here. Too polished, too composed. "I'm looking for Claire Donovan," he told the receptionist. "Are you family?" she asked. He hesitated. "No. I'm the one who answered." The nurse led him through a maze of curtains and machines until he saw her. Pale, tubes running from her arm, her lips bluish from shock. She looked fragile, almost unrecognizable from the strong executive he once knew. "She collapsed from cardiac stress," the doctor explained. "It looks like exhaustion and dehydration, maybe long-term anxiety. Has she been under trauma recently?" Adrian's jaw tightened. "You have no idea." The doctor sighed. "She'll recover, but she needs someone responsible to sign temporary care consent." "Are you that person?" Adrian hesitated again. For the first time in years he felt fear, not of loss, but of responsibility. "Yes," he said finally, signing his name. "I'll take care of it." When the doctor left, he moved closer. Rainwater dripped from his sleeve onto her hand. He brushed it away carefully. She stirred faintly, eyes fluttering open. "Adrian?" Her voice was barely a whisper. He nodded. "You're safe?" "You're in the hospital." Her lips trembled. Why are you here?" He smiled faintly, the kind that hides pain. "Because no one else came." Her eyes filled with tears before she turned away, ashamed. "He left, didn't he?" Adrian didn't answer. He didn't need to. The silence was louder than truth. Machines beeped softly between them. Outside, thunder cracked, shaking the glass. In that small, sterile room, two strangers bound by betrayal shared something wordless. Not love, not pity, but recognition. She had lost everything. He had seen too much of the world to be surprised. And yet, somehow, both felt the same ache. What it means to be utterly alone in a city that never sleeps. As lightning split the Manhattan sky, Adrian realized this call wasn't an accident. It was destiny. Dialing back a debt the universe never forgot. Morning crept through the blinds of Mount Sinai's recovery ward, painting soft stripes across the sterile white sheets. The storm had passed, but the air still smelled like rain and antiseptic. Machines hummed quietly beside the bed where Claire lay still, her chest rising shallowly beneath the thin blanket. Adrian sat in the visitor's chair, suit jacket folded neatly over his armrest, his tie loosened but his posture still straight. He hadn't slept. His MacBook was open on his lap, a spreadsheet of numbers glowing faintly, but his eyes weren't on the screen. They were on her. Every now and then, nurses passed by, whispering to each other. Everyone recognized him. Adrian Cole, the rival CEO who ruled the financial district from his tower on Park Avenue. Why was a man like him sitting by the bedside of a woman once branded unstable by the media? When Claire stirred, her lashes fluttered before her eyes opened, confused. For a moment she looked around in panic, trying to remember where she was. "Easy," Adrian said, his voice low and steady. "You're safe." She blinked, her throat dry. "Adrian?" Her voice cracked like paper. Why are you here?" He set his laptop aside. "The hospital called. You listed me as your only emergency contact." Her brows knitted together. "That can't be right. She stopped. Her memory rewound. A hospital form months ago when she had no one left to write down. No family, no friends. Out of habit, she'd filled his name, thinking she'd never need it. She exhaled, a bitter laugh slipping out. "That's ironic." Adrian tilted his head. "Ironic? That the only person left to call is a man I barely know." He looked at her, eyes calm but heavy. "Sometimes strangers care more than the ones who promise to." Silence hung between them. Outside, city traffic murmured faintly through the glass. Claire tried to sit up, grimacing from the pain in her chest. Adrian stood immediately, adjusting her pillows, his movements precise but careful, like he was afraid she might shatter. "You shouldn't move," he said. She met his gaze. "I can't afford to stay here. The bills." "I've already taken care of them," he interrupted. Her face hardened. "You didn't have to do that." "I know," he replied simply, "but someone had to." She turned away, embarrassed by her own tears. "You think this makes me look pitiful, don't you?" Adrian's voice softened. "It makes you human." For a long moment, neither spoke. The steady beep of the heart monitor filled the space between them. He watched her fingers twitch restlessly, as if her mind was already running back to work, to survival. Finally, she whispered, "He's with her, isn't he?" Adrian didn't ask who. He didn't need to. The entire city had seen the photos. Ethan Drake, dazzling at the plaza, arm wrapped around Lila Cross, the caption, "The new power couple of Wall Street." Adrian nodded once. Yes. Claire's face went pale. Her lips trembled, but she refused to cry. Then let them have each other, she said through clenched teeth. They deserve what's coming. Adrian studied her, intrigued by the quiet steel in her tone. He'd seen women crumble under less humiliation, but not her. She was broken, yes, but not destroyed. He rose, walked to the window and looked down at the city that had both crowned and crucified them. Claire, he said, his reflection faint beside hers, the world doesn't remember the ones who break quietly. It remembers those who stand back up. Her voice was barely audible. I don't know if I can, he turned, eyes sharp but warm. Then let me remind you how. In that small room something shifted. Not romance, not rescue, but the first flicker of alliance. Two fallen empires staring at each other across the ruins, realizing they might rise only by standing side by side. As the morning sun hit the skyline, Claire didn't know it yet, but the stranger beside her had just become the weapon fate would use to rewrite her story. Rain returned that night, tapping softly against the hospital window like a patient memory. Claire couldn't sleep. The monitors blinked rhythmically, but her thoughts raced too fast. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Ethan's face. Not from tonight, but from years ago, back when his smile was gentle and his hand still trembled when he held hers. Adrian had left for a board meeting, promising to check on her in the morning. His absence left the room too quiet, and in that silence, the ghosts came crawling back. 3 years earlier, before the scandals and betrayals, Drake Capital was just a dream built in a small apartment overlooking the East River. Claire was the strategist, the numbers, the logic. Ethan was the voice, the charisma, the man who could sell Rain to the clouds. Together, they were unstoppable. Or so she thought. She remembered late nights with coffee-stained spreadsheets, her hair tied messily, Ethan pacing the living room in his socks, pitching ideas to imaginary investors. You're my compass, Claire, he'd told her once, brushing a stray lock of hair from her face. You keep me from flying too close to the sun. She believed him. When the first wave of success came, Ethan changed subtly. New suits, new friends, late meetings that didn't make sense. But Claire ignored the signs. She was too busy building the empire they had dreamed of. She thought the man she loved was simply adapting to the spotlight. Then came the first lie. He told her the numbers were fine, but she noticed an offshore account she hadn't authorized. When she asked, he smiled and said, "Just a tax strategy, babe. You wouldn't understand." But she did understand, and she also understood the fear that flickered behind his eyes when she mentioned audits. One night, she confronted him. "You're inflating the numbers, Ethan." He slammed his whiskey glass down. "Don't start this again. You worry too much." "Worrying keeps us out of prison," she snapped. That was the first time he raised his voice. "If you can't handle the heat, maybe you're not partner material anymore." Those words carved something deep inside her. Months later, the SEC began sniffing around. Ethan panicked, and Claire, the loyal fool, used her connections to bury the lead. She falsified a minor report to buy him time, believing he'd fix it quietly. Instead, he used that falsified document to blame her when the truth exploded. The day the story broke, tabloids screamed. Drake Capital CFO under investigation for fraud. CEO clears his name. Ethan looked at her across the conference table, pretending to be devastated. "I didn't want it to end like this," he whispered as cameras flashed. She had to pack her things that same afternoon. The penthouse she'd decorated, the office she'd designed, all gone. He froze her accounts, called it procedure. By nightfall, her name was poison. Now, sitting in the hospital bed, Claire laughed bitterly at the memory. "Partner material," she muttered. The nurse entered quietly. "Are you okay, Miss Donovan?" Claire nodded. "Just ghosts." After the nurse left, her phone buzzed on the tray table, an unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. A male voice said calmly, "Miss Donovan, this is a courtesy call from Drake Capital's legal department. We've been instructed to remind you that you're still bound by the confidentiality agreement you signed. Any public statements will be considered a breach." Claire froze. "He sent you to threaten me while I'm in a hospital bed?" "Just doing my job," the man replied. She hung up. Her heart pounded, not from fear, but fury. For the first time in months, her anger burned hotter than her grief. She looked toward the door where Adrian had stood earlier and whispered, "You wanted a reason to fight, Claire. Now you have one. The past had finally stopped haunting her because she decided to turn it into ammunition. By the next morning, sunlight poured through the blinds like liquid gold, but to Claire it felt like interrogation light. She sat upright in the hospital bed, a folder of discharge papers in her lap, her fingers trembling as she reread the fine print of her divorce agreement. Every word was a knife she'd once willingly handed to her ex-husband. Adrian entered quietly, carrying 2 coffees from Starbucks. He looked rested, composed. The kind of calm that comes from years of burying emotions behind power. "You look better," he said, setting a cup beside her bed. "Well, slightly less pale." Claire gave a weak smirk. "I've been accused of worse." Adrian noticed the papers. "Is that—" "My marriage certificate's tombstone," she interrupted. "Want to see how a genius signs her own death warrant?" He took the document, scanning the bold letters. Property settlement agreement between Ethan Drake and Claire Donovan. His expression darkened with each clause. Forfeited assets, waived alimony, gag order, full liability for financial discrepancies. "You took all the blame," he said quietly. "I signed whatever his lawyers gave me," she admitted, voice brittle. "I just wanted it to be over. I didn't even read the last 10 pages. Adrian's jaw flexed. "That's not a divorce, Claire. That's a cover-up." She laughed dryly. "Call it what it is, survival. He told me if I didn't sign, he'd leak my mental health records. Said it would ruin any chance I had of working again." Adrian leaned forward. "He blackmailed you." She looked away, her throat tightening. "I was stupid enough to think he still had a shred of decency. Turns out he kept my heart in one hand and my reputation in the other." Adrian studied her, the bruised pride behind her sarcasm, the exhaustion hiding under her defiance. "I've seen ruthless men," he said, "but Ethan Drake is a different breed. He doesn't destroy for gain, he destroys for pleasure." Claire's eyes flickered up. "You sound like you know him." Adrian hesitated. "We crossed paths before. Let's just say he once cost me something I cared about." She tilted her head. "A business deal?" "A friend," Adrian replied, his tone clipped, final. Silence thickened between them. Claire looked down at the signature on the final page. Claire Donovan, consenting party. The ink had faded slightly, but the shame hadn't. "The worst part," she whispered, "is that he made me believe it was mercy. He said, 'Sign this and you'll finally be free.' I thought freedom meant peace. Turns out it just meant poverty." Adrian stood, pacing to the window. "Do you know what this means legally? That I'm an idiot? That you can't talk, but he can," Adrian said, turning sharply. "He can rewrite the story however he wants, and trust me, he already has." He grabbed his phone, opened a finance app, and showed her the latest headline. "Ethan Drake, the visionary CEO who overcame betrayal." Claire's breath caught. "He turned himself into the victim?" Adrian nodded grimly. "And the world believes him. Investors love a man who survived heartbreak. It makes him human, profitable even." Claire clenched her fists. "He used me to clean his image." Adrian's eyes burned with quiet anger. "He used you to wash his crimes." For a moment, Claire felt dizzy, not from illness but from realization. She wasn't ruined by accident. She'd been engineered to fall. She reached for the pen on the table, gripping it tightly. "Then maybe it's time I stop surviving and start remembering who I used to be." Adrian met her gaze, something dangerous flickering there. "If you're serious, I can help you. But once we start, there's no going back." Claire smiled, a ghost of her old fire flickering alive. "Good. I've had enough of looking back." For the first time in years, Claire wasn't afraid of Ethan Drake. She was planning his reckoning. The following week, New York was buzzing with Ethan Drake's latest PR triumph. Billboards near Times Square glowed with his confident smile, captions calling him the man who rebuilt after betrayal. Magazines called him the comeback king of Wall Street. The city loved a redemption story, even if it was built on someone else's grave. Claire scrolled through her phone in disbelief, reading the headlines over and over. Each one twisted the knife deeper. Visionary CEO overcomes his ex-wife's scandal. Ethan Drake finds love again with model Lila Cross. Proof that resilience wins. She threw the phone onto her couch. Her tiny Brooklyn apartment shook as the device hit the wall. Dishes rattled in the sink. "He's not resilient," she muttered through clenched teeth. "He's radioactive." Her savings account was almost empty. She was 3 weeks behind on rent, living off instant noodles and coffee. The same woman who once managed billion-dollar investments was now counting quarters for laundry. A soft knock echoed from her door. Claire froze. Through the peephole, she saw a sharply dressed figure. Adrian Cole. His suit was immaculate, his presence filling the cramped hallway like a shadow from a better world. She opened the door, halfway. "How did you find me?" "You used to pay rent through a business account," he said. "It wasn't hard." "Stalker much?" she said dryly. He ignored the jab, stepping inside and glancing around the room. "You shouldn't be living like this." "Welcome to my new reality," she said. "It's called rock bottom." He placed a folder on the table. "You should see this." Inside were photographs, private jet receipts, charity donation ledgers, and a spreadsheet of bank transfers. "What am I looking at?" she asked. "Proof," he said. "Ethan's been moving money through shell charities, including one registered in your name." Claire's stomach dropped. "My name?" Adrian nodded. "He's using your old credentials to launder his profits. If the SEC ever investigates, they'll trace it back to you, again." She felt the blood drain from her face. "He's setting me up, again?" Adrian's tone was calm, but his eyes were stormy. "He's building a narrative, the hero who survived a corrupt wife. If this surfaces, you'll go to prison while he walks away clean." Claire slumped onto the couch. "He's always 10 steps ahead." Adrian crouched in front of her. "Not this time. You have something he doesn't. Me." She looked up at him, wary. "Why do you care so much?" He exhaled, leaning back slightly. "Because I know what it's like to be destroyed publicly. Ethan once sabotaged one of my acquisitions. Dozens of people lost their jobs. He did it just to prove he could." "So this is revenge for you?" she asked. "For both of us," he said. Claire studied him carefully. He wasn't lying, but his calm made her uneasy. Adrian didn't help people. He managed outcomes. "If we do this," she said, "we do it my way. No more men deciding what I'm worth." Adrian smiled faintly. "Fair enough, then start by remembering who you are." She stared at the photo of Ethan on his magazine cover. The man who rose above scandal. His perfect grin made her skin crawl. She whispered, almost to herself, "They think he's a hero. Let's show them what heroes do when no one's watching." Adrian straightened his tie. "Then we'll need every document you ever kept. Emails, drafts, backups, anything from Drake Capital." Claire's eyes lit with a spark of purpose. "I might still have something," she said slowly. "The USB drive. I thought it was dead." Adrian smirked. "Then we'll bring it back to life." As he left, the city's noise swelled through the window. Taxis honking, people laughing, the pulse of Manhattan moving on as if her life hadn't just shifted course. While the world worshipped Ethan Drake, Claire Donovan began quietly digging his grave, one file at a time. The next evening, Adrian's black Mercedes slid to a stop outside Claire's building. He climbed the narrow stairwell, carrying a slim silver briefcase and that same air of effortless authority that made people step aside without knowing why. When she opened the door, her apartment smelled faintly of coffee and rain. Papers were scattered across the table, her old laptop open beside a flickering lamp. "You look like someone planning a war," he said. "More like cleaning up one," Claire replied, eyes tired but sharp. "Come in, I found the drive." She handed him a small, scratched USB. "It's old, probably fried." Adrian took it carefully, like a piece of evidence. Sometimes the oldest things hide the biggest mistakes. He plugged it into his MacBook. The screen blinked, loading, then a folder appeared. "Internal reports, Drake Capital." Claire leaned closer. Her breath caught. "Oh my God, that's it. My files, the ones he said were deleted." They opened a document. Detailed records of offshore transfers, shell corporations, and internal emails marked confidential, each one stamped with Ethan's electronic signature. Adrian's eyes narrowed. "He used your login credentials to authorize these. This is enough to destroy him." Claire sat back, shaking. "Then why do I feel sick?" "Because this isn't justice yet," Adrian said quietly. "It's just ammunition. We need a plan." She met his gaze. "Then let's make one." Over the next few hours, they worked like old soldiers, patient, focused, saying little. Claire translated old spreadsheets, explaining the coded transactions. Adrian cross-referenced bank statements through his own contacts. Every so often, their eyes met, not with flirtation but mutual respect, forged in shared scars. Around midnight, she broke the silence. "Why are you doing this, Adrian? You could have just walked away." He didn't look up. "Because I owe you. You saved my company once, remember?" Claire frowned. That was a lifetime ago. He closed his laptop. Maybe. But back then, you gave me information that stopped Ethan from swallowing my firm. You risked your job to warn me. I never forgot that. Claire's eyes softened, but suspicion flickered behind them. So this is your payback? Adrian smirked. Think of it as balance. They stared at each other for a long second. Trust wasn't born, but something like it flickered in the dark. Then, out of nowhere, the apartment lights flickered. Claire froze. That's not normal. I paid the bill. Adrian's instincts kicked in. He reached for the lamp, switched it off, then looked through the blinds. Across the street, a black SUV idled with its headlights dimmed. Get away from the window, he ordered. Who is that? She whispered. Probably someone who doesn't want you finding those files. Claire's heart pounded. You mean Ethan sent people to watch me? Or to make sure you don't exist anymore, Adrian said flatly. He pulled out his phone, sending a text. Security inbound. Don't move. The SUV pulled off seconds later, tires squealing as it disappeared down the block. Claire sank onto the couch, trembling. He's watching everything, isn't he? Adrian nodded. Of course. You're the one person who can end him. Claire laughed bitterly. Funny. I thought I was the one who couldn't even pay rent. Adrian crouched in front of her. That's exactly why he underestimates you. He thinks you're broken, but broken glass cuts deeper than anyone expects. She met his eyes, steady again. Then let's start cutting. He straightened, offering his hand. From now on, we move as one. No secrets, no hesitation. She hesitated only a moment before shaking it. Her palm felt small against his, but her grip was iron. In that dim Brooklyn apartment, two ruined souls made a dangerous alliance. One built not on trust, but on the promise of shared destruction. Rain fell in thin silver threads against the window as the city pulsed beyond the glass. The apartment was quiet, except for the rhythmic tapping of laptop keys. Claire and Adrian sat across from each other, faces dimly lit by their screens. Piles of documents covered the table, a battlefield of evidence, memories, and revenge. Claire's fingers moved quickly, decrypting archived files from the USB. Her once trembling hands had grown steady, precise. She was back in her element. Numbers, patterns, logic. Adrian watched her for a moment, impressed. You were born for this, he murmured. She didn't look up. No, I was just married to the wrong person. When the final file opened, her breath caught. There it was. Wire transfers, LC Holdings, confidential. A set of offshore accounts, each bearing the initials of Ethan's new fiancée, Lila Cross. God, Claire whispered. He's hiding his stolen assets under her name. Adrian leaned closer. She's not just his girlfriend, she's his front. Claire scrolled through the timestamps. He started this right before he served me the divorce papers. He was preparing the cover-up before he even left me. Her eyes filled with rage, but also something colder. Clarity. Adrian exhaled slowly. We can leak this to the SEC anonymously. Let them bury him. Claire hesitated. Not yet. If we expose it now, he'll twist it again. He'll say I forged it to get revenge. We need something undeniable. Something he can't spin. Adrian studied her. You've thought this through. I've been thinking for 2 years, she said. I just didn't have anyone who believed me. Their eyes met briefly. That quiet understanding between two people who had both been burned by Ethan Drake. Then Claire noticed something odd on one of the documents. A digital signature. Not Ethan's, not hers. She zoomed in, frowning. Wait, who's AC? Adrian stiffened slightly, but too late. She looked at him, suspicion rising. Adrian Cole. Why is your signature on one of his shell companies? He sighed, rubbing his temples. It's not what you think. Then what is it? She demanded. Because right now, it looks like you're working both sides. I invested in one of his holding companies years ago, he admitted. Before I knew it was a fraud operation. I kept it hidden to monitor him from inside. Claire laughed bitterly. You don't monitor a man by funding him, Adrian. His voice hardened. Don't forget who's protecting you from being erased off the map. And don't forget who gave you the ammunition to destroy him, she shot back. The air between them cracked with tension. Two brilliant, wounded people, each too proud to back down. Finally, Adrian spoke quietly. Ethan ruined my company once. Hundreds of employees lost their jobs because of him. I promised myself I'd bring him down, no matter how long it took. So yes, I played dirty, but I never played you. Claire's anger faltered, but the doubt stayed. You expect me to believe that? He stepped closer, lowering his voice. Believe whatever you want. Just remember, the only reason you're still alive is because I showed up when no one else did. Her pulse raced, torn between fury and something dangerously close to trust. Then prove you're on my side, she said finally. Adrian looked at her, eyes dark as the skyline behind him. I already did. By not walking away. They stood inches apart, thunder rumbling beyond the window. Claire's heart pounded, not from fear, but from the realization that this partnership was far more dangerous than she imagined. He turned toward the door. Get some rest. Tomorrow we start phase 2. Which is? She asked. He paused in the doorway, making him think you've given up. After he left, Claire stared at the glowing files on her screen. His name still sat there. AC. She didn't know if Adrian Cole was her savior or her next betrayal. But either way, she'd make sure she was the one writing the ending this time. 2 nights later, Manhattan glittered beneath a velvet sky. The city pulsed with the kind of luxury that mocked people like Claire Donovan, once a part of it, now orbiting its edges. Adrian had booked a table at the Skylark, a rooftop bar in Beverly Hills, where Ethan and Lila were attending a private investors' dinner. This is reckless, Claire whispered, adjusting the earpiece Adrian had given her. She stood in the restroom, hands shaking as she fixed her hair. Her black dress wasn't designer anymore, but it hugged her like armor. Adrian's voice came through the earpiece, low and even. Reckless gets results. You're not going there to beg. You're going there to make her talk. She's not going to talk to me. She will, Adrian replied, because women like Lila Cross can't resist reminding others that they've won. Claire stared at her reflection. The circles under her eyes told a story of sleepless nights and broken pride. She straightened her posture. Fine, let's end the game he started. When she stepped out into the open air of the rooftop, the world glittered like champagne. Lila sat near the balcony, laughing too loudly beside Ethan, who looked every inch the golden CEO again. Sharp suit, perfect smile, the kind of confidence that came from lying beautifully. Claire approached slowly. The moment Ethan saw her, his smile faltered. Claire? Lila turned, her painted lips curling into a smirk. Oh, this is awkward. Just passing through, Claire said, voice calm. Didn't know the circus was in town. Ethan's tone shifted, quiet but laced with control. You shouldn't be here. Relax, she said, picking up a glass from a nearby tray. I'm not here to ruin your perfect image. I just wanted to congratulate you both. She raised the glass mockingly. To second chances and stolen ones. Lila leaned back, amused. You're braver than I expected, or drunker. Claire smiled. Maybe both. Tell me, Lila, how does it feel to build a future on someone else's ruins? The younger woman scoffed. I'm not the one who got caught embezzling money. Ethan shot her a warning glance, but it was too late. Claire's smile sharpened. Funny, I thought you were the one whose initials appeared on those Cayman accounts. LC Holdings, right? Lila froze. What? What are you talking about? Oh, don't play dumb, Claire continued smoothly. I guess Ethan didn't tell you everything. Lila's eyes flickered with panic before narrowing. You're bluffing. Am I? Claire asked, pulling out her phone and pretending to scroll. Maybe I should show this to the SEC. They love surprises. Lila's hand trembled slightly. You wouldn't dare. Ethan stood abruptly. That's enough. Claire, leave before you embarrass yourself again. But her work was done. Lila had said enough, and Adrian, sitting 3 tables away under a different name, had recorded every word. As Claire turned to go, Lila grabbed her wrist. He's lying to you too, you know. He said you were crazy, that you'd never recover. I guess he was half right. Claire looked down at the manicured hand, gripping hers. Enjoy your borrowed empire while it lasts. She pulled free and walked away. Downstairs, she met Adrian near the valet. He handed her a small recording device. You did well, he said. We got everything we need. She exhaled shakily. She's cracking. You could see it in her eyes. People like Lila only stay loyal while the money flows, Adrian replied. Cut the current and they eat each other alive. As they drove off, Claire looked out over the glowing skyline. For the first time, she felt the shift. Ethan wasn't untouchable anymore. He had cracks, and now she had a knife. But what neither of them knew was that someone else was already watching from the shadows, and tonight's game had just drawn new blood. The next morning, Manhattan woke under a heavy gray sky. Claire sat by the window of her apartment, watching the storm clouds roll in. She hadn't slept, The echoes of last night's confrontation replayed in her mind on an endless loop. Lila's nervous voice, Ethan's cold expression, Adrian's calm after the chaos. Something about it all felt too smooth, too controlled. She turned as Adrian entered, still immaculate despite the sleepless night. He set 2 coffees on the table. "Congratulations," he said. "We got the recording. Ethan's finished." Claire eyed him carefully. "You sound too sure for a man who's been hunting his rival for years." Adrian smirked. "That's because I've already played this game before." He pulled out his phone, showing her an encrypted file. The audio from Lila's outburst. Her voice was clear, incriminating. "He's lying to you too," the recording hissed through the speaker. Claire nodded slowly. "So what now? We leak it?" "Not yet. First, we trace where Ethan's next transfer is going. Once he moves that money, we'll hand the evidence to the SEC. They'll catch him mid-crime. Game over." She folded her arms. "And you're sure your system's secure? Because I've been burned enough to know nothing ever really is." Adrian's eyes flickered with amusement. "You worry too much." Hours later, while Adrian stepped out for a call, Claire sat at his laptop, curiosity tugging harder than caution. The screen was still open, the encrypted folder blinking. She hesitated, then clicked. Inside, she found more than the recording. She found a file labeled drcapitalstrategy.adex. When she opened it, her heart stopped. It was a briefing addressed to Adrian Cole, outlining a merger proposal with Drake Capital. Dated 2 months ago. Her stomach twisted. The words blurred as she whispered, "He's been working with Ethan?" Just then, Adrian walked back in. "What are you doing?" She looked up sharply. "You tell me." His gaze dropped to the screen, then back to her. "That's not what you think." "Really?" she said, voice shaking. "Because it looks like you were planning to buy into his company while pretending to help me destroy him." He sighed, stepping closer. "Listen to me. That document is old. It was a setup Ethan sent to test me. I played along so he wouldn't see what I was doing behind the scenes." She stood, fury rising. "You expect me to believe that?" "Claire," he said softly, "if I wanted to betray you, I wouldn't have to explain anything." She stared at him, torn between anger and fear. For the first time, she realized how little she actually knew about Adrian Cole, the man who appeared out of nowhere and became her lifeline. Then the lights flickered. Her phone buzzed on the table. A new email notification glowed across the screen. "Unauthorized login detected. All your files have been deleted." Her breath hitched. "What the hell?" Adrian grabbed his phone, his face tightening. "It's him. Ethan's people must have traced the signal. They're wiping everything." She rushed to her computer. The folders were vanishing one by one. Her evidence, her leverage, her future, all dissolving into nothing. "Stop it," she shouted. "You said we were protected." "I said we were careful," Adrian snapped, his fingers flying across the keyboard. "There's a mole, someone inside my network." "You mean one of your people?" He froze. "Yes." The weight of that word made her knees weak. The screen went black. Everything was gone. Claire stared at the reflection of herself, pale, furious, powerless again. "So that's it? He wins?" Adrian looked up slowly, his jaw tight. "Not yet. If he wants to play dirty, we'll get dirtier." She turned away, shaking her head. "You really are just like him." He caught her wrist. "No," he said quietly. "I'm worse." Neither of them realized that somewhere across the city, Ethan Drake was already watching their failure unfold. And the mole who sold them out was someone much closer than they could ever imagine. The next morning arrived without sunlight. Manhattan sat under a heavy mist, gray and restless, the kind of weather that matched Claire's pulse. She hadn't slept. The loss of the files haunted her like a scream she couldn't silence. All their evidence, gone, erased in seconds. She paced the small apartment, wrapping her arms around herself. Adrian hadn't called since last night's disaster. He'd left after the blackout, saying only, "I'll fix it." But his silence now felt like abandonment all over again. When the knock came, she nearly jumped. Her heart pounded as she opened the door, only to freeze. Ethan Drake stood there. He looked exactly as he did in the magazines. The perfect navy suit, the Rolex glinting under the hall light, the faint cologne that used to make her knees weak. But now, the scent only made her sick. "Hello, Claire," he said smoothly, stepping past her before she could react. "You look terrible." She slammed the door behind him. "What do you want?" He turned, smiling like a man who already owned the room. "To talk, to make peace." Peace, she repeated. You ruined my life, Ethan. You framed me, took everything, and left me to rot. And now you want peace? He sighed as if she were a difficult employee. You're emotional, as always. Listen, this doesn't have to get worse. I know you've been snooping, working with Adrian Cole. Her stomach tightened. You're tracking me. Of course, he said, casually brushing imaginary lint from his sleeve. You're a liability, sweetheart, but I'm here to give you an out. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a folder. Inside was a document stamped with the SEC logo. This is a formal statement clearing you of all charges from the past investigation. All you have to do is sign this affidavit, declaring that Adrian Cole manipulated you into hacking my private accounts. Claire's blood ran cold. You want me to frame him? Ethan smiled. Just balance, darling. He's been using you from the start. Did you really think a man like him helps anyone for free? Her fingers twitched at her side. Why me? Why now? Because the market is shifting, he said. Adrian's preparing a hostile acquisition. If I go down, he profits. If he goes down first, I survive. You, on the other hand, you get your clean slate. A little compensation, too. He slid a check across the table, 7 digits. She stared at the number. It could erase her debts, buy her peace, even her dignity. Ethan leaned closer. Think about it. No one will blame you for saving yourself. He's dangerous, Claire. He's not who you think. For a moment, the world tilted. What if Ethan was right? Adrian had lied about the merger, about his investments, about the mole. Maybe she was just another pawn. Ethan reached out, fingers brushing hers. Let me protect you like before. That touch shattered the spell. She jerked her hand away. Before? You mean when you used me to cover your crimes? His smile thinned. Don't be dramatic. Get out. He straightened, sighing. You've changed. The Claire I married would have known when to fold. She took the document and ripped it in half, the paper tearing through the silence. The Claire you married is dead. Ethan's expression hardened. Then die with her. He turned and left, his shoes clicking down the hall. Claire stood frozen, pieces of the check still fluttering to the floor. Her chest rose and fell sharply, adrenaline mixing with rage. As she gathered the torn papers, she didn't notice the tiny recording device glinting under her lamp, left there by Adrian hours before. When Adrian later heard Ethan's offer through the recording, he realized Claire hadn't betrayed him, but Ethan Drake had just signed his own death sentence. Night settled over the city like a secret. From his penthouse office overlooking Park Avenue, Adrian Cole replayed the recording for the 10th time. Ethan's voice filled the room, smooth, arrogant, and damning. All you have to do is sign this affidavit, declare that Adrian Cole manipulated you into hacking my private accounts. Adrian pressed pause, his jaw tight. The bastard had tried to turn her. He leaned back, the leather chair creaking beneath him. For a man who built his empire on strategy, Adrian hadn't expected Claire Donovan to become the wild card in his war. She'd refused the money. She'd ripped up the deal. That kind of loyalty was rare and dangerous. He poured a glass of scotch, watching the amber swirl. His phone buzzed, unknown number. He answered cautiously. Cole? A distorted voice replied, You think you've won? Check your inbox. The line went dead. Seconds later, his email pinged. A single message appeared. No subject, no sender. Just an attachment titled Claire Donovan Confession.mp4. Adrian's pulse quickened as he clicked play. On screen, a blurry video showed Claire in her apartment, speaking to someone off camera. Her voice trembled. I can't keep lying for him. If the SEC finds out I've falsified the reports. The video cut off mid-sentence. Adrian froze. The date stamp showed it was recorded 3 years ago, the night Ethan framed her. But the angle, the focus, it wasn't from security footage. Someone had filmed her through her window. He stared at the file, realization dawning. Ethan had been watching her long before the scandal broke. Meanwhile, across town, Claire sat in the dark of her apartment, hugging her knees on the couch. She'd spent hours replaying Ethan's visit in her mind. The smile, the lies, the check fluttering to the floor. Every word felt like poison slowly working through her veins. When her phone buzzed, she jumped. Adrian's name glowed on the screen. Claire? He said, his tone sharp. He's been spying on you for years. I have proof. Her breath caught. What? I got a video. One of you. Dated before the divorce. He had cameras on you, even when you thought you were safe. Claire's stomach twisted. He said he deleted everything when we separated. Adrian's voice hardened. He lied. He's using those tapes to build leverage. That's how he kept the board quiet during the investigation. She stood abruptly, pacing. So he's been blackmailing investors too? Exactly, Adrian said. We can use that. If we expose this, the SEC won't just fine him, they'll bury him. But the evidence is gone, she reminded him bitterly. He wiped my files. I might have a backup, Adrian admitted. My servers store shadow copies of every file you opened from my system. I didn't tell you because I wasn't sure you'd trust me. She froze. You backed up my data? I protected it, he corrected. Even from you. There was silence. Then Claire exhaled, half angry, half relieved. You're infuriating. Efficient, he countered. For the first time in days, she laughed. A small, tired laugh that cracked something open between them. Adrian smiled faintly, though she couldn't see it. Tomorrow, I'm calling a contact at the Wall Street Herald. Once we leak this, Ethan's reputation won't survive 24 hours. Claire's voice turned cold. I don't want survival. I want annihilation. Then you'll have it, Adrian promised. Outside, thunder rolled across the skyline like a warning. Inside, two voices, one hardened by betrayal, the other sharpened by vengeance, wove together over the phone line. Neither of them noticed the red recording light blinking faintly on Claire's bookshelf camera. Ethan Drake had planted one last device, listening to every word they said. And this time, he wouldn't just fight back. He'd strike first. Sirens cut through the morning like surgical steel. Claire was still in bed when the knock became a battering, and two men in plain clothes filled the hallway with the kind of authority that doesn't ask permission. A badge flashed. Claire Donovan, you're under arrest by order of the United States Attorney, a voice said. The words landed like a physical blow. She had barely processed the sentence when an agent cuffed her wrists with cold, unfamiliar metal. Neighbors peered from behind curtains. Her phone buzzed a frantic string of missed calls, Adrian's name pulsing on the screen. She tried to reach for it, but an agent took the device and handed it into evidence. We have warrants for unauthorized disclosure of corporate documents and computer fraud, the agent explained with bureaucratic calm. You have the right to remain silent. Handcuffed and barefoot, Claire walked past her own life like a stranger. Her apartment, once a refuge of silence and old victories, looked like a crime scene. The agents moved with practiced efficiency. Photographs of the room, inventory lists, boxes labeled evidence. Her chest constricted. The world kept its steady pulse while hers fractured. At the precinct, fluorescent lights buzzed. A plastic chair waited under a camera. Claire sat alone for what felt like hours. Time became a smear of faces and paperwork. Two agents questioned her quietly, reading her Miranda rights again as if to overemphasize the point. We received a tip alleging you disseminated Drake Capital files, one said. You were identified through IP traces. We need a statement. Claire's voice came out hollow. I didn't leak anything. I was fighting them. She wanted to scream that she'd been trying to expose Ethan, not assist him. But the words sounded absurd against the official paper file the agent pushed across the table. Photocopies of emails, screenshots, a digital trail, they said, linked her to the breach. Each page looked like a verdict. A reporter's shadow flicked across the window as someone whispered, Drake Capital ties to hacker exposed. The precinct suddenly felt smaller, suffocating with the knowledge of other eyes. She thought of Ethan's offer, the torn affidavit, the check that had fluttered to the floor. She thought of Adrian's face the night after. Calm, distant. Had she been swapped from one cage to another? When they led her out in handcuffs, a camera shutter clicked. The flash was merciless. She kept her head high because she had nothing left to hide, but inside she was collapsing. The van smelled like disinfectant and highway coffee. Her wrists throbbed. Outside, the skyline seemed an indifferent audience. At the federal holding facility, the intake process was procedural and cold. An officer photographed her profile and collected fingerprints. An inmate number replaced her name in the ledger. They issued a plain orange jumpsuit. Sitting on the stiff cot in a small cell, she felt the weight of isolation more crushing than the steel on her wrists. A hard bench, a narrow window high above, the echo of other people's muffled conversations. It all smelled like consequences. She replayed the last months in a loop. Ethan's laughter at the gala, Lila's smirk, the files that had blinked out of existence. She felt betrayed by Adrian, by the fragile faith she had placed in him. Why hadn't he shown up? Why had he let this happen? Fear mixed with a ragged, hot anger. If he had abandoned her, she would tear him down first. Late into the night, a guard slipped a folded envelope through the food slot. Her name was on it in a neat hand. Inside, a single slip of paper read, "Trust the plan. Evidence will surface. No signature, only an initial." AC Claire pressed the paper to her chest until it warmed. Her pulse steadied. For a moment, the prison walls felt less like an end and more like the dark room before a photograph is developed, where shadows reveal the truth. She didn't know if she was being played, but the slip was a sliver of hope in a room designed to swallow people whole. As Claire sat behind iron and concrete, the public believed the narrative that fit their appetite. But in the quiet, someone else was moving pieces on a different board. And the arrest was only the next move in a much larger game. The pounding on her door came just after dawn, the kind that tears you from sleep with a spike of terror. Claire sat up, disoriented, the taste of metal in her mouth. 3 sharp knocks, then a voice, firm and official. "FBI, open the door." For one frozen second, she thought it was a nightmare. Then came the crash of the battering ram. Her front door burst inward. Flashlights, heavy boots, men in dark jackets. "Claire Donovan?" She couldn't breathe. "Yes, what's happening?" "Federal warrant. You're under arrest for unauthorized access and distribution of corporate data belonging to Drake Capital." Hands grabbed her arms. Cold steel cuffs snapped shut around her wrists. Her bare feet scraped the hardwood as they pulled her toward the hallway. Neighbors peeked through cracked doors, whispering her name like a scandal. "You're making a mistake," she gasped. "Ethan set me up. I didn't leak anything." But no one listened. One agent read her rights while another bagged her laptop and phone. A third flipped through her mail, found the unpaid bills, and muttered, "Pathetic." Downstairs, the morning air was sharp with rain. Reporters already waited behind the barricade, microphones thrust forward. "Ms. Donovan, were you working with Adrian Cole? Did you steal data from Drake Capital?" She turned her face away, blinking against the camera flashes. In the chaos, she caught sight of a black Mercedes parked across the street. Tinted windows, a silhouette watching, her heart clenched. Adrian. He didn't move. He just watched as they put her in the car. The door slammed. The world became sirens and static. At the federal building, the interrogation rooms smelled of coffee and disinfectant. 2 agents sat across from her, folders thick with documents. The older one, Agent Burns, flipped a page. "You think you're the victim, Miss Donovan. But the evidence says otherwise." "I am the victim," she said hoarsely. "Ethan Drake forged those transactions. He's been laundering money for years." Burns slid a printed email across the table. "This email came from your address, sent to a journalist under an alias. It contains confidential financial records, your signatures on the metadata." Claire stared at the page, speechless. Her own words, or something that looked like them, stared back. "That's not me. Someone copied my credentials." "Convenient," Burns said flatly. "You expect us to believe you were framed again?" Her hands shook. "Yes, that's exactly what happened." But their faces were stone. Hours later, she was processed at the federal detention center. Her jewelry taken, her clothes replaced with a scratchy orange jumpsuit. The fluorescent lights made everything too bright, too real. In her cell, she sat on the thin mattress, staring at the wall until the patterns blurred. She tried to piece together how Ethan had done it, how he'd managed to turn her into the villain of her own story twice. Somewhere, beyond these concrete walls, he was probably toasting champagne with Lila Cross, celebrating her downfall like another corporate victory. Tears pricked her eyes, but she refused to cry. "Not again," she whispered. "You won't win this time." Hours passed. The sound of footsteps echoed down the hall. A guard stopped at her door, sliding an envelope through the slot. No name, no stamp, just her initials scrawled in sharp ink, CD. Inside, a folded note. "Trust me. Everything's moving according to plan. AC." Her breath caught. "Adrian." For a moment, hope flickered through the fear. Was this all part of his scheme? A play to draw Ethan out? Or was it another lie in a city built on them? She pressed the note to her chest, whispering to herself, "If you're lying, Adrian, I'll finish what Ethan started, and take you down myself." Somewhere beyond those gray walls, another story was being written. One where the woman everyone thought was broken would become the storm her enemies never saw coming. The storm outside the detention center matched the one building inside Claire's chest. Rain hammered the narrow window of her cell, streaking down like furious tears. She sat on the thin mattress, still gripping Adrian's note. The handwriting was deliberate, steady. Trust me. Everything's moving according to plan. She'd read it 100 times, searching for hidden meaning. Did he set her up, or was this part of some grand scheme she wasn't meant to understand yet? The uncertainty twisted inside her like a knife. The metal door creaked open. A guard appeared. "Donovan, you've got a visitor." Claire blinked. "Now?" "Lawyer?" he said, unlocking the door. They led her through a maze of corridors until she reached the visitation room. Glass partitions, telephones on each side. When she sat down, she froze. It wasn't Adrian waiting for her. It was a woman in a gray trench coat, soaked from the rain. Her hair slicked back, her expression unreadable. "Ms. Donovan," she said, lifting her ID. "Special Agent Harper, FBI Financial Crimes Division." Claire's pulse spiked. "I already told your people everything." "I'm not here to question you," Harper interrupted. "I'm here to tell you the truth. You were arrested because someone leaked partial evidence against you, intentionally. But an anonymous source just delivered the full files to us this morning." Ethan Drake's files. Claire's breath caught. "What?" Harper slid a folder under the partition. "The real ones. The offshore accounts, the shell charities, the wire transfers to Lila Cross. Whoever sent them also included internal memos proving that you tried to stop the fraud." Claire stared, speechless. "The SEC has confirmed the data. We've issued a warrant for Ethan Drake's arrest as of this morning." Her heart pounded so hard it hurt. He's going to prison?" Harper nodded. "If everything checks out, the evidence came from a secure server under the name AC. I assume that means something to you?" Claire exhaled shakily. "It means I was right to trust him." The agent's eyes softened slightly. "You've been through hell, Miss Donovan, but if you're ready, I need you to testify. You'll be released within the hour." Claire sat back, overwhelmed. For months, she'd been drowning in the same nightmare. Now finally, someone else saw the truth. An hour later, she stepped out into the rain, clutching a small bag of belongings. The cold hit her lungs like rebirth. A black sedan idled by the curb. The passenger window rolled down, revealing Adrian behind the wheel. "You look terrible," he said. "You look smug," she replied, sliding in beside him. "You could have told me you were getting me arrested on purpose." He smiled faintly. "If I had, you would have tried to stop me." She glared. "You planned this whole thing?" "I needed the FBI to believe you were guilty long enough for them to open a real investigation. Once they traced the files, everything pointed straight to Ethan. It was the only way to get him locked down before he could cover his tracks." "You're insane," she muttered. "Effective," he countered. For the first time in months, she laughed, raw, exhausted but real. "You could have at least warned me about the orange jumpsuit." "Didn't suit you," he said, eyes twinkling. "You're more black silk and sharp heels." The rain outside thickened as they drove toward the skyline. Claire leaned her head against the window, watching the city blur by. "So it's really over?" Adrian's tone darkened. "Not yet. Ethan's not the kind of man who goes quietly." As if on cue, Claire's phone buzzed. A new message from an unknown number. She opened it. A single sentence appeared. "You think you've won, but you have no idea what's coming." Her smile faded. "He's still playing." Adrian's jaw clenched. "Then so are we." Lightning flashed over Manhattan as the balance finally shifted, and the hunted woman became the storm that would wash her enemies clean off the board. The morning air over Manhattan was sharp and electric. By 9 o'clock, reporters filled the marble atrium of Drake Capitol Tower. Microphones, cameras, the rustle of designer suits, all pointed toward the glass podium where Ethan Drake would deliver what the media called his statement of redemption. Claire watched from a car parked across the street. The building loomed before her, all glass and arrogance, its mirrored facade reflecting the sky like it owned it. Her fingers tightened around the phone in her lap. "He's really doing it," she said. Adrian adjusted his cufflinks beside her, calm as ever. "He's predictable. That's his weakness." Inside the tower, Ethan stood before the press, his voice perfectly modulated. "Today," he began, "Drake Capital reaffirms its commitment to transparency and integrity. False allegations have damaged reputations, but truth always prevails. He smiled into the cameras like a man born to deceive. I built this company on trust, he said, and we will continue to honor that. Outside, Claire laughed bitterly. Trust, she muttered. He doesn't even know what the word means. Adrian handed her a small silver flash drive. Ready? Her eyes flicked to him. That's the recording? And more, he said. Every account, every offshore transfer, every name, all of it goes live once you plug it in. She hesitated. You could do it yourself. He met her gaze. No, he destroyed your name. You finish it. Claire took the drive, its metal cold in her palm. Then let's bury him. They stepped out of the car, crossing the plaza under a haze of camera flashes. No one noticed them at first, until Claire pushed open the main doors and the security guards froze. Ethan's speech faltered when the crowd turned. The sight of her, alive, free, standing tall in a tailored black coat, hit him like a ghost walking into his lie. Claire? He said softly into the microphone, his voice cracking for the first time. She walked straight to the stage. Don't stop on my account, she said. You were just talking about integrity. The reporters erupted, cameras flashed like lightning. Ethan forced a smile. Miss Donovan, this isn't the time. It's exactly the time, she cut him off. She turned to the crowd. 2 years ago, I was accused of fraud by this man. I lost everything, my career, my name, my home. But today, I have proof of who really built that lie. Adrian, standing at the back, nodded once. Claire stepped forward and slid the flash drive into the projector laptop beside the podium. The screens behind Ethan came to life. Lines of data filled the massive display. Emails, transaction logs, and video files. One played automatically. Ethan's own voice, recorded in his office. Use her credentials. If the SEC asks, she's the scapegoat. That's what she's for. The crowd gasped, reporters shouted questions. Ethan went pale, grabbing the mic. This is fake. It's been manipulated. By you, Claire snapped. Every number, every word is yours. You framed me to protect yourself, but you forgot one thing. I kept the receipts. The room dissolved into chaos. Agents from the FBI's Financial Crimes Division stepped through the doors, badges flashing. Ethan Drake, you're under arrest for securities fraud, embezzlement, and obstruction of justice. Ethan's composure shattered. You think you can ruin me? He hissed as they cuffed him. This isn't over. Claire stared at him, her voice steady. It is for you. Outside, cameras followed her into the sunlight. Adrian joined her on the steps, slipping off his sunglasses. You handled that beautifully, he said. She exhaled, the weight finally leaving her chest. I didn't handle it. I ended it. For the first time in years, the world saw Ethan Drake for what he was. And Claire Donovan, once his shadow, stepped into the light as the woman who burned him to ashes. 2 days later, the world finally exhaled. News anchors on every network repeated the same headline. Ethan Drake arrested for fraud and conspiracy. Whistleblower ex-wife cleared of all charges. Manhattan buzzed with disbelief. Investors panicked, board members resigned. And somewhere in the background of every broadcast, Claire Donovan's name glimmered again. No longer in shame, but in justice. She sat on the balcony of a small penthouse overlooking Central Park, wrapped in a gray sweater, watching the city below pulse like a living organism. Her phone wouldn't stop buzzing, calls from journalists, offers from publishers, messages of apology from people who'd vanished when she fell. She ignored them all. Adrian walked out carrying 2 mugs of coffee. You've officially broken the internet, he said, handing her one. She smiled faintly. About time. You could have gone on live TV, he said. They wanted your statement. I've said enough. The evidence speaks louder. She looked out over the skyline. Besides, this was never about fame. It was about survival. He studied her for a moment. So what happens now? Claire sipped her coffee, her reflection shimmering in the window. Now, I rebuild. He raised an eyebrow. Rebuild what? Myself, she said simply. A silence stretched between them. Not uncomfortable, just full. The kind that exists between 2 people who've been through war together. Inside, the TV played softly. Ethan's face appeared on screen, pale, cuffed, surrounded by agents. The reporter's voice was brisk. Sources say Drake faces a minimum of 20 years in federal prison. His bail request has been denied. Claire didn't flinch. 20 years, that's almost poetic. Adrian glanced at her. You don't sound satisfied. I'm not, she admitted. Justice isn't revenge. It's just the end of noise. He nodded slowly. Then what do you want? She turned to face him. Peace. And maybe a chance to do something good with what's left. Adrian smirked. Careful? That sounds dangerously noble. I've been the villain long enough, she said. They both laughed, the sound softer than it should have been after so much destruction. Her phone buzzed again. This time, the message made her pause. It was from an unknown number. Congratulations. But remember, power doesn't vanish, it transfers. Adrian noticed her expression shift. What is it? She handed him the phone. Looks like Ethan still has friends. He read the message, eyes narrowing. It's a warning, probably from one of his old partners. We'll deal with it. Claire sighed. I don't want to live in another war. You won't, Adrian said, because this time, you're not alone. She looked at him then. Really looked. The man who'd once been her enemy, her savior, and possibly both. You knew this would happen, didn't you? He gave a half smile. I don't believe in happy accidents, only well-executed chaos. She laughed under her breath. You're impossible. Effective, he corrected, just like before. They stood there as the city lights flickered on, one by one, turning the skyline into a sea of gold. For the first time in years, Claire didn't feel like she was drowning. I'm starting something new, she said. A foundation, for women who've been silenced, ruined, manipulated, like I was. I'll call it the Donovan Initiative. Adrian raised his cup. To starting over. She clinked her mug against his, to never being underestimated again. In the distance, thunder rumbled over the East River. Not a threat this time, but a promise. The storm that once tore her apart had become her power. And as Manhattan sparkled beneath her feet, Claire Donovan finally understood what it meant to win without losing herself. Spring came early that year, and with it, a strange calm that felt almost borrowed. For the first time in years, Claire Donovan slept through the night. Her mornings were quiet now, soft jazz on her speaker, coffee brewing, sunlight spilling across her kitchen counter. She had moved into a minimalist apartment overlooking the Hudson, clean lines and glass walls. Peace, after chaos, felt foreign. But peace never lasts in a story like hers. It began with an envelope, no name, no return address, just her initials written in precise ink. It waited by her front door, like a warning. Inside was a single photograph, grainy, printed from a security feed. It showed Adrian Cole shaking hands with a man in a tan coat outside a federal courthouse. The man's face was partially obscured, but the caption scrawled underneath made her blood run cold. Deals never die, they just change hands. Her phone buzzed moments later. An anonymous text, he's not who you think. Claire sat on the couch, staring at the photo until her coffee went cold. Adrian had been off-grid for 2 weeks, international meetings, he'd said, and she hadn't questioned it. But now, doubt crept in like smoke. She called him. No answer. Again, straight to voicemail. By evening, she couldn't sit still. She dressed sharply. Black coat, boots, resolve. If the past 2 years had taught her anything, it was that the truth always left footprints. And Adrian Cole, for all his charm, was not a man who moved without leaving traces. She started with his office downtown, the one hidden behind a private equity firm on Park Avenue. The receptionist hesitated when she gave her name. I'm sorry, Miss Donovan, she said. Mr. Cole no longer works here. Claire frowned. Since when? The woman flipped through a file. 2 weeks ago. His position was dissolved. By who? The receptionist hesitated again, lowering her voice. The acquisition team from Drake Capital Holdings. Claire froze. Drake Capital? Yes, the woman said, puzzled. They're under new management now. Something about restructuring after Mr. Drake's conviction. Outside, the city suddenly felt colder. Ethan Drake's empire was being rebuilt, from prison. And Adrian, the man who had helped her destroy it, was somehow part of the reconstruction. That night she drove to the edge of Brooklyn, to a warehouse district she hadn't visited since the worst days of her downfall. Adrian's old security contact, a wiry man named Marcus, met her there. Claire Donovan, he said, lighting a cigarette, didn't think I'd see you again. I need to find Adrian, she said. You worked with him. Where is he? Marcus hesitated, exhaling smoke. You don't want that answer. Try me. He looked at her. Really looked. You think Adrian was your savior. He wasn't. He's been playing both sides since day one. That FBI tip-off? The one that freed you and nailed Ethan? It came from Drake Capital's backup server. Guess who had access? Her chest tightened. You're lying. Marcus tossed his cigarette aside. You ever wonder why your files were wiped the same night you were arrested? Adrian didn't lose them, Claire. He handed them over to leverage his way into Ethan's seat. She stumbled back, shaking her head. No. He wanted justice. He wanted power, Marcus said simply. And now he has it. Claire's pulse hammered in her ears. If what you're saying is true, Marcus shrugged, then you're the last loose end. The warehouse lights flickered. She turned. Headlights blazed through the window. 2 black SUVs pulled up outside. Marcus backed away. You should run. As tires screeched and doors slammed, Claire realized the war wasn't over. It had just changed generals. And this time, the man hunting her wasn't Ethan Drake. It was Adrian Cole. Rain turned the Brooklyn dockyards into sheets of silver. Claire ran through the puddles, the echo of footsteps chasing her between the empty warehouses. The black SUVs skidded to a stop somewhere behind her. Engines humming, doors slamming, voices shouting orders. Her lungs burned, her pulse hammering in her ears. She ducked behind a rusted shipping container, trying to steady her breathing. For years, she had fought Ethan Drake, clawed her way out of ruin, rebuilt herself from ashes, but now the ghost wearing a familiar face was coming for her. Adrian Cole, the man she trusted, the man who saved her, was the same man who had just replaced the devil she destroyed. Claire. A voice echoed through the rain, calm, controlled. Adrian's. You're making this harder than it needs to be. She pressed her back against the metal wall, eyes wide. You lied to me, she shouted. His footsteps drew closer. No, I gave you what you wanted, justice. You just didn't ask what it would cost. Her fingers brushed against the inside pocket of her coat. The flash drive. The backup. She had made a copy of every file he sent to the FBI, encrypted and hidden in plain sight. You used me, she said, stepping out from behind the container. Adrian stood under a street lamp, rain slicking his dark hair, his expression unreadable. He looked nothing like the man who once brought her coffee or smiled when she made him laugh. He looked like power, sculpted and merciless. I used opportunity, he replied. You think Ethan built his empire alone? Men like him always have silent partners. When he fell, someone had to fill the vacuum. I did. Claire's voice trembled, but not from fear. So everything, the files, the arrest, my name, all of it was your play? He gave a small, humorless smile. You wanted to burn him. I just made sure the fire burned in my direction. You're no better than he was. I'm better at it, Adrian said simply. Behind him, 2 men emerged from the SUV, guns drawn but lowered. Adrian raised a hand. No one touches her. She's not the enemy. She's proof that everything I built works. You call betrayal a business model now? I call it evolution. Lightning split the sky, illuminating his face, calm, calculating, utterly unrepentant. For a second, she saw it all clearly. The gala, the hospital, the whispers, every move orchestrated by him. He had always been there, shaping her downfall and redemption like a chessboard he never intended to share. But Adrian made one mistake. He underestimated the woman he created. Claire slowly lifted the flash drive, holding it up between 2 fingers. You forgot something, she said. Adrian's eyes flicked to it. That's not the original. No, she said, a dangerous smile forming. It's the copy you don't control, and it's already uploading to a server you can't reach. For the first time, his expression faltered. You wouldn't. I learned from the best, she said, or maybe the worst. The rain intensified, drumming against the asphalt. One of his men whispered into a radio. Adrian's voice hardened. You think the world will thank you for exposing another scandal? They'll forget you again. That's what they do. I don't care, she said. I'm not doing this for fame. I'm doing it because you turned my life into a weapon. Now I'm taking it back. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. You don't have the stomach for this war, Claire. She met his gaze, unflinching. I have nothing left to lose. That makes me dangerous. A long silence passed. Finally, Adrian gave a slow nod, not of defeat but respect. Then finish it. Claire turned and walked into the storm, her silhouette swallowed by the rain. Behind her, Adrian watched as the servers began to light up with data, his empire unraveling in real time. For the second time in her life, Claire Donovan burned a kingdom to the ground. Only this time, the ashes belonged to the man who taught her how to light the match. By dawn, Manhattan was awake with chaos. The financial world trembled as breaking news flooded every screen. Adrian Cole, under federal investigation for corporate espionage and market manipulation. Helicopters hovered above Park Avenue, camera crews lined the sidewalks, and the mighty Cole Industries logo flickered on the tower before shutting off entirely, like a crown being stripped from a fallen king. From her apartment overlooking the Hudson, Claire watched the headlines scroll across the screen. Her plan had worked. The flash drive, encrypted and set to auto-upload at midnight, had released every secret Adrian had buried. Offshore accounts, falsified audits, and recorded calls between him and Ethan Drake years before their rivalry went public. Adrian wasn't just Ethan's successor. He had been his architect. Claire stood by the window, phone in hand, missed calls, unknown numbers. Every journalist in New York wanted her quote, the woman who exposed two titans in 1 year. She silenced the phone and turned off the TV. She didn't need applause. Silence was enough. But peace, again, didn't last long. A knock at the door. She opened it to find a man in a dark trench coat, tall, calm, familiar. Special Agent Harper from the FBI. The same woman who'd freed her weeks before stood beside him, her expression unreadable. "Ms. Donovan," Harper said, "we need to speak with you." Claire stepped aside. "I figured you would." They sat in the living room. The agent placed a file on the table. "You should know, Mr. Cole turned himself in an hour ago. He's been fully cooperative, claims the evidence you leaked was selectively edited." Claire stiffened. "He's lying again." "Maybe," Harper said, "but here's the part that complicates things. He's naming you as a co-conspirator, says you both planned to take over Drake Capital and failed to disclose your involvement." Claire's stomach twisted. "That's insane." The agent nodded. "We believe you, but to clear you completely, we'll need you to testify again, this time against Adrian Cole." She exhaled slowly, her reflection trembling in the glass. "If I do, he'll come after me." Harper's tone was calm but firm. "He's not untouchable anymore." After they left, Claire walked to her desk and opened her laptop. An unread email blinked on the screen. The subject line, "You've won, but you'll still lose." No sender, no traceable IP. The message body was empty, except for a single link. Against every instinct, she clicked it. A video opened, security footage from the Brooklyn dockyard. It showed her, standing in the rain, holding up the flash drive before walking away. Adrian's voice echoed faintly, "Then finish it." And behind him, one of his men aimed a gun, but didn't fire. Adrian had stopped him with a single word, "No." Her chest tightened. He could have ended her that night, but he didn't. Then the video shifted. Adrian's voice again, speaking into a recorder. "If this leaks, tell them it was me. She's already lost too much." Claire's breath caught. For a moment, confusion replaced anger. Had he predicted his own downfall? Protected her one last time? She shut the laptop, heart racing. He was a monster, but monsters sometimes left their shadows behind. That evening, the city glowed gold under the setting sun. Claire walked along the river, coat pulled tight against the wind. Reporters shouted her name, but she kept walking, the noise fading into the hum of the water. Adrian Cole was finished. His empire was gone. But his final move, sparing her, warning her, lingered in her chest like a stone she couldn't swallow or throw away. She whispered into the wind, "You were right. Power doesn't vanish, it transfers." And somewhere in a federal holding cell, Adrian Cole smiled faintly, because even stripped of everything, he knew the world still revolved around the woman who finally learned to play his game. 6 months later, New York had moved on, as it always did. Scandals faded, empires reshaped, and the same streets that once whispered her name in pity now carried it in admiration. Claire Donovan, the woman who exposed two of Wall Street's most powerful men, had become both legend and cautionary tale. The morning sunlight streamed through the windows of a glass-walled conference room overlooking Central Park. Reporters waited as Claire adjusted the microphone, her black suit impeccable, her expression calm. Behind her, a new logo gleamed on the wall, the Donovan Initiative, a foundation for women silenced by corporate abuse. 2 years ago, she began, I thought justice meant punishment. I thought if I made the people who hurt me fall, I'd finally be free. But justice isn't about revenge. It's about taking back the power they stole. The room was silent except for the faint hum of cameras. Claire's voice didn't shake. It carried the weight of every sleepless night, every humiliation, every betrayal that forged her into steel. When the world called me a liar, she continued, I stayed quiet. When they said I was finished, I stayed standing, and now to every woman who's been told her voice doesn't matter, I want you to know it does. Because silence protects the powerful, but truth rebuilds the broken. Applause swelled. Cameras flashed. Somewhere, a journalist whispered, "She's rewriting the ending." As the press dispersed, Claire stepped out onto the terrace. Central Park stretched below, green and alive. A light breeze tugged at her hair. For the first time in years, she didn't feel haunted. Just present, her phone buzzed, unknown number. She almost ignored it until she saw the message. "Still breathing, aren't you?" Her chest tightened. No name, but she didn't need one. Adrian Cole. For a long moment, she just stared at the text. The man was in federal prison, awaiting sentencing. He shouldn't have access to a phone, and yet somehow his words reached her like an echo from a storm she thought she'd escaped. She typed back before she could stop herself. "You lost." The reply came instantly. "Did I? You're still fighting my battles." Her thumb hovered over the screen. Then she deleted the message, blocked the number, and slipped the phone into her coat pocket. When she turned around, her assistant, a young woman named Marcy, was waiting with a folder. "Ms. Donovan," she said, "the Attorney General's office confirmed Adrian Cole's companies will be liquidated next week. The assets can be redirected to your foundation if you approve." Claire smiled faintly. "Do it. Let something good finally come from all that corruption." Marcy hesitated. "You really think people can change?" Claire looked out over the city, the skyline glowing under the rising sun. "No," she said softly. "But we can decide what to build from the wreckage they leave behind." Later that evening, as the city lights shimmered on the Hudson, Claire stood alone in her apartment. No longer the one she hid in, but a new place filled with light and glass. On the wall hung a single framed photograph, her at the charity gala years ago, before everything collapsed. She stared at it for a moment, then turned it face down. Her reflection in the window was different now. Not the frightened woman who once begged to be believed, but the one who had learned how to burn and rebuild with grace. She whispered to her reflection, "He taught me the game, but I changed the rules." Outside, lightning flickered faintly over the river. Not a threat, but a reminder. Every storm ends, but it leaves behind those who learn how to walk through the rain. And as New York pulsed beneath her feet, Claire Donovan finally closed the book. Not with vengeance, but victory. The empire of lies was gone, and in its place stood the woman no one would ever silence again. So, that's how the story ends. You're still here, aren't you? If you're hearing this right now, maybe something in Claire's journey touched you. Maybe a small part of her fight feels a little like your own. Because life isn't about never falling. It's about what you do after the fall. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That's what Claire learned. She lost everything: love, reputation, peace. But when she stopped waiting for justice from others and decided to create it herself, she found freedom. Sometimes the world will try to write your story for you. People will betray, twist, or underestimate you. But remember, the storm that breaks you can also rebuild you. Healing isn't loud. It's quiet courage repeated every day. Choosing to stand up, even when no one believes you can. If this story stirred something inside you, don't let it end here. Hit like, share it with someone who needs to hear it tonight, and subscribe to the channel. Because somewhere out there, another person is waiting to be reminded. You are stronger than what tried to destroy you.